Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of out of from the soul, out of the ass, or maybe it's just from the ass. I don't know.
Us, but okay.
Um, I'm Athan
Matthew Brown?
and this is episode
14.
14.
Got it right this time.
Last one was Lucky 13. Yeah. So we thought it would be a good idea. This will be released around New Year's time. So we thought it would be a good idea to reflect upon the past year. And, you can share with us, what thought about your past year and what you're looking forward to in the new year, as we will do with you today. So, yeah, without further ado, I'm going to start, Matthew, by asking you a tough question.
Go for it.
What was your biggest regret about the past year?
Regret? Ooh, here's a good question. Regret. I'm trying to single it down to one. I guess I regret not being more successful in my attempts to raise awareness to some particular issues that I'm trying to bring to light. Although it's difficult because I think I've done everything. Just to set the scene a little bit, I won't go into too much detail. There are some issues at the University of Edinburgh. I'm going to speak very broadly, just so we don't get stuck in the weeds. There's been some issues that I've taken, not offence, but I'm strongly opposed to them in regards to policies and approaches at the University of Edinburgh and the Students' Association of the University of Edinburgh. And I have been engaged in a little bit of activism in trying to understand and to articulate and to get people's attention and to engage in conversation and debate around these issues. And I've done a great deal of reading, writing, and thinking, and late nights, and yelling at my wall, trying to figure this out, right? Trying to, and not just win, right? I'm not just trying to win here. There's something that I consider to be a problem, and I'm trying to solve it. For me, to answer your question, this has been happening at the same time as I've been trying to actually attend to my studies. Because I'm a third-year philosophy student, we have increasingly more challenging essays and material to engage with, which takes its time, right? And I'm not a fast reader. Takes me a while to digest and get my head around stuff, and I have found myself incredibly distracted. Because I'm trying to balance both of these endeavors at the same time. I'm trying to do my studies, get that right, so that I can stay at the university and get my degree, or get an education, more accurately. But then at the same time, I'm also trying to read the material, theoretically, that sits in the background of the problem I'm trying to address, and the material that the university is putting out regarding the problems that I've identified. And I found myself at times doing both of these things poorly, because I'm trying to do both at the same time. I haven't been able to put as much time into reading the things that I would like to read, right? Like, I would have liked to have spent much more time on this Nietzsche paper, which we discussed last episode. I'd have liked to have spent much more time thinking about David Hume's work, and the other things that I've been given on my course. And I also would like to have spent more time reading the theoretical material that sits in the backdrop of the problem that I'm trying to address. So my biggest regret of this year, and it's a tricky one because of course there's probably things I could be doing to be more efficient and more effective at this. and I'll figure those out hopefully. But it's doing two of the things that I want to be doing not as well as I could be doing them because I'm trying to do both of them at the same time. So, a bit of a complicated answer. And
do you have any plans, or have you thought about how you may want to improve upon that in the new year?
well, I never used to do New Year's resolutions, right? I always found them pointless.
Me too.
But for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been doing the same one.
Okay.
And that is to be more intentional. My New Year's resolution for every year for the last 4 years, and had not consciously. The first 2 years was probably I was conscious about it, and then I just trying to keep it up. Right, it's to be more intentional with the things I'm doing. So if you're going to do something, like do it. Be intentional. If you're going to say something, be intentional about what you say. Like mean what you say.
Yeah.
If you're going to write to someone, right, mean to do it and take it seriously. So. My strategy has been, unfortunately, and this might not be the best way of going about it, but is to accept a sort of a standard. No, because I'll be honest, like Are you okay?
Just looks like there's a little bit of a light underneath the camera.
Coming out of the lens.
Yeah, I'm wondering if my flashlight is on.
You can. Well, I think it is, but you can check it if you want to see if it has any impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm sure the viewers won't mind our little.
All right, guys. Short pause. Gone.
Yeah. Well, no, I think I couldn't see it, but it must have. So long as it's fine on the screen, I don't.
Yeah, I think the flash is gone.
The flash was on last time.
Really?
Yeah, but you showed me the picture. It looks fine.
Looks fine.
Yeah, no, because this is covering where the light comes out. I think it must have just been maybe in your eyesight. I don't think it was. Because you showed me the picture of the thing, right?
Yeah,
it looked fine.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it
Sorry,
back?
it's back.
Okay.
Yeah, right? Sorry, guys. This is... Yes, it's back.
There we go.
Okay, so yes.
Success.
Intentionality.
So intentionality and trade-off, right? Opportunity costs, right? If you do something, it comes at the expense of doing something else. And I've been weighing this up because I've been trying to address these problems since I've been here, right? It's been almost 3 years now, coming up to 2 years, whatever. And I'm having to weigh up, because when I go to people for advice about this, the thing people always say to me is, your degree is the thing that's most important here, right? Like your education is the thing that's most important. And I can't really make this point without going into the weeds with it, but I'll just say it and we can come back to it at a later date, right? The problems that I think I'm addressing, to me, if I'm right about them or somewhat accurate, they are tremendously larger issues and more significant and more important than me receiving a degree, right? Like my acquiring a degree, right, from a university, from an institution, in my eyes is not as important as the problem that I'm trying to address at the university, which I think impacts not just my education, but the potential education of tens of thousands of young people and young adults for potentially generations to come. So to me, that's a bigger problem than my getting a degree. Now, my education is important to me; it's why I'm here. But I have my entire life, and I think there has to be some kind of a trade-off, or I'm going to do both of these things poorly and not achieve any of either of them. So and look, I'll be honest, I'm not scoring badly, right, on any of my essays. I haven't missed a deadline. I've been scoring sort of low to mid 60s.
You don't need to go into.
No, I'm answering your question.
Okay.
I'm like,
yeah,
because this is you asked me what am I going to do moving forward.
Okay. Yes.
Right, and my answer is I'm going to have to embrace the trade-off of, well, I'm just going to have to pass my course, right? As in the work I do towards my degree program will be sufficient to pass and sufficient to get me a reasonable grade. Well, I'm not learning from it, but if I'm going to be giving the attention and reading the other things, given that it takes me a while to read things, there has to be some kind of a trade-off. So I think that's
What about the idea that your performance in a degree
mhm.
will help give you kind of a soapbox, so to speak, by which you can better be able to address the problem that you are trying to address. So, in some ways, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people, right? Somebody, if, your performance on in the degree, if it is consistently high, well, then you have a lot more credibility in a lot of people's eyes when you're coming, towards these other issues.
well, not necessarily, because that's like I'm going to speak ill of degree programs for a second, right? These things are incredibly gameable, right? Like you've spoken to me about this yourself, right? You just recognize the pattern by which you need to write in order to get a particular score, right? That score is not reflective of your capacity to think
No,
or engage with problems.
it's not.
So just having like consistently high scores and even getting, say, a PhD does not therefore necessitate that the occupier of such piece of paper is a decent and reasonable thinker and engaging with problems.
It's true. That alone is not a qualification to do
Right.
that. But if you do have, it is a check mark, right? And if you do have that check mark, and then you're also on top of that able to demonstrate that you are one who can critically think and engage in, these ideas and
Mm.
really, be an independent thinker, then I think that kind of that that check mark can help elevate
Sure.
you know that, because it can say, look, he can do, when he needs to, like, he there's no questions about his intelligence,
Well,
like,
there should be.
well, maybe there should be, but there's no, people's eyes, there's no question that this guy, like, do you know what I mean? Because if you just, like, it maybe shouldn't be this way, but there is in if you've achieved a certain thing, right, then people at least know that that you're not coming at it from nowhere, right?
No, it's fair. It's one of the reasons why I'm here. So that's fair.
You know, um, so I do think it is something to think about for you, because, and look, it's something that I think about a lot too, with a variety of different things.
Hmm.
Is, you know you want to be, everybody wants, or not everybody, but a lot of people want to be, the person who's guiding, the people in a certain way and trying to fix a problem, right? But and I think what's complicated is everybody may have a solution to a problem, and there's probably 100 people
Hmm.
for every, 1,000, that probably, maybe more, probably 100 for every, you know 10,000, let's say, who have the same idea for every, how to fix every problem
Sure.
and see things the same way. But, you know presumably only one gets to be the person who is, who people are listening to. And it's not just about the ideas that you have. It's being the person that people will listen to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And part of that is building up, you know,
A skill set, and
skill
yeah,
set, but
yeah.
also trust, you know. And if if you're trying to change something within the university, and if you think doing so will ultimately need to kind of pull people who are in this university to your position,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to need to gain some kind of trust from.
Right, but the that trust seems to be, for me to gain that, seems to me to be, go along with our little game, don't make too much noise, right? Don't call us on our shit, and then we trust you, and then maybe afterwards you get to say something once you've left
But
the
here's the
establishment.
difference. It's not go along with the game and become one of our pawns, and then maybe you can, play within the game. It's play in the game, understand the game, know the ins and outs, know everything, and then you'll be better equipped to say,
Right, but no, but I feel like I've out of most of the, and this is a ballsy claim, maybe, right? But I think most students, I've probably read more university policy documents than most people who attend, probably than a lot of faculty, right? Like, and actually, I'll take that last bit back. But like, I've read a significant amount of policy documents, right? So what I'm trying to do, and well, just to be really clear, I'm not just sort of yelling at faculty members, right? I'm not just being a bullshit douchebag, right? I'm like trying to articulate
right,
and formulate an argument, right? And I'm trying to approach these people as academics and as educators,
right,
as a student, right? I'm not trying to be anything other than a student. I'm saying, look, here I am, a student. Here I am engaging in my studies. Here's this problem that I think I see. Here's my best current articulation of that problem, given my level, given my skill set. All right, help me, right? What do you think of the articulation? Is it a good articulation? Are there any logical fallacies in there? Am I making any mistakes? Have I made any incorrect assumptions? Right? This is exactly how I've framed all of my communication. Every single email I've sent, right? Although I haven't minced my words, I've been assertive, I've made accusations, right? But every single one of these emails has been in the context of, I'm a student, here's my articulation, here's my model of what I think the problem is. What do you think? Right? What's wrong with my model? I've literally asked that question, right? Like more than a handful of times, right? What is wrong with my model of description of what's happening here? And I don't get any substantive answers. I don't get substantive answers to those questions. I get, so to your point that you were making, what I am doing is trying to understand the game, right? By reading these documents, by trying to engage with the actual people who are running this place, right? Like I do it with my tutors, I do it with my lecturers, right? Like I take these problems to the people I have classes with. I email students, right? I've sent you one of these emails, right? Trying to get signatures towards a motion that I want to put towards the student council, right? Like I am doing what I can with what's in front of me. Right. And I'm trying not to do this foolishly. I'm trying not to do this stupidly. I'm trying to understand the environment. And look, there's some positive things that have come out of this, right? Like I found myself sort of in academics, in circles with academics. I've been attending events with academics, having in and around conversations that I otherwise wouldn't have heard of if I wasn't involved in trying to involve myself in these conversations. I've been invited to, there's a group called Edinburgh Academics for Academic Freedom. Through my lobbying, let's say, through my attempts to get people's attention and engage these people in conversation, I've attended their events, I've asked questions, I've pushed back on things. I've tried to do this in as constructive a way as I possibly can whilst getting my point across. And I've been invited to help with the organisation and hosting of events and to write blog posts for these people. Now, that's not a brag. I'm just saying whilst I'm passionate and angry, right, about this thing that I've taken issue with, I'm doing everything I feel is reasonable to take this as seriously as I can and to be intentional about it.
I'm going to say 3 things.
Go for it.
First is, it sounds like you're doing stuff and you're making progress. So I don't think it's. I know you said.
That pick a different regret? Is that?
Well, I just mean I know you're regretful about you not
I have other regrets.
I'm aware, but I know that you feel like you weren't able to accomplish or doing it particularly as well as you wanted to. But from what you're coming at, I think you're doing a lot. And the other 2 things I'll say is 2 quotes. one from Michael Corleone and one from Lady Macbeth. And the Michael Corleone is, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. I think, that sounds a little bit crude, but I think, there is something where, I know you're very passionate about the subject, and and that comes across very clearly. But I think there is something to
strategy.
I think sometimes you get carried away, and this is something I've noticed is you get carried away, you get so excited, and you kind of, I think you spread yourself out too thin. And pick your battles, right? Wait for the moment. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep engaging in these academic circles. But when you're engaging with people who you adamantly disagree with, be a little bit, coy. Don't let them. This is the second quote. I'm gonna get this quote wrong, but she says something like, be, something like float like thy flower and be like thy serpent underneath.
Muhammad Ali kind of float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yeah, I mean, I think I screwed up the quote completely. The first part of the quote, but basically the idea is,
appear as the Apollonian.
Appear as as somebody who's, because look, I know you feel like your particular problem is very time sensitive, but I think it's important to not, panic. And I know you're not panicking, but I do think when you rush things and you kind of resort to kind of, desperate attempts, it can hurt you in the long run.
Sure, yeah. I'm doing my best not to do desperate attempts.
Yeah. Well, I just mean,
I want to do desperate attempts.
I just mean, and I think, look, I think this semester you've been better than last semester, to be honest. I think last semester you were tackling very specific things that I with very specific people that I don't think had a lot of weight over this.
Can you be?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think the very long blog post questions we're writing about from the course organizer, like, when they had like the Q&As.
Right.
I think in that context, you would have been better off, I think, you would have been better off playing the long game and saying, look, there's this problem. I'm going to gather as much evidence as I can and as much, things that I can against this position, so that, because they weren't ready to engage with you. They weren't. And that was obvious from the very beginning. They were not going to engage with you seriously.
So who's the they you're talking about?
I'm talking about, this we're talking about here the course organizers in Knowledge and Reality.
Right, okay, I see.
I think, and even if they were ready to engage with you, they were not, these are people who are protecting their position, right? They have a life.
Right, okay.
They have kids. They're not the ones who are going to stand up and say, look, I'm with you. Let's fight the system.
No, I know. That's why I was having the conversation with them.
But my point is it wasn't gonna. You were opening yourself up, but not getting anything in return.
Oh, but I did. You see, did get something in return.
What did you get?
Well, because the lack of because one of the things that I found really interesting in all of this, and I'm sorry for everyone if this is all very vague and it's difficult to follow what we're talking about, but
Yeah, you can start asking me questions.
I'll ask you some questions in a sec. One of the things, because it does at times feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall, but one of the things I learned, and I think maybe this is why I seem better than I did last semester, is because one of the things I get out of these kind of interactions is I get to see the double standard, right? The signal that I get from not a response, right, or not engaging, or not being ready to engage, right, or whatever it is, right? That's still a signal. I still get because frequently one of the things I'm talking about is racial prejudice and racial discrimination, right? Now, the university doesn't shut the fuck up about its commitment against such a thing, right? Now, what I've been doing is I've been trying to bring incidences and evidence of that to the attention of people in positions of authority within the university system. And what I have seen in response to me trying to do that is a very interesting double standard. And that, to me, is evidence, right? That is the acquiring of information. That is the acquiring of data, right, to put towards my argument.
But you must have known that they weren't going to engage with you.
I didn't know.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know. I had suspicions. I had suspicions, of course, but I didn't know. I was hoping, right, that given the vocal signaling of virtue that everyone at this university does, I was hoping that when I tried to have these conversations with people that I would be engaged with, that I would at least have my arguments considered seriously. And I haven't seen that. And that's a signal to me. And I know it is frustrating, and it has been disheartening, and I think I was down for quite a while during last semester. I was like, it was stressful. I was like angry and frustrated and confused, but it's, to close it off, those kind of interactions have still provided me with insight.
Okay.
And they've still provided me with evidence.
Okay.
And they've still provided me with things to work with and to go off of. And also, it's been really enlightening because I've been having these conversations with these people. And like you just said, right, these are people who have lives and families. And I've sat down and had conversations with academics.
Their salaries are attached to their positions.
Right, exactly. I've sat down and had conversations with academics who are in support and defense of the theoretical tradition that I'm critiquing. Right, and I've engaged with them, and I learn every time I have a conversation with people, and it adds to my model of understanding about what's going on. So I no longer have a problem having these conversations, which might on the face of it seem to be fruitful. Anyway, enough of me. We'll have this conversation another day. How about yourself? Biggest regrets?
Biggest regrets. You know what? Regret is an interesting word because it entails something negative happening, but it also...
What's an interesting word, sir?
Regret is an interesting word because it entails that something negative happened, but then it also entails that there was something you could have done to prevent that negative thing from happening. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That there was another positive course of action. And the thing that I'm thinking of, the thing that I struggle with is I actually go back and forth because I'm not even sure what's things to regret or not. Things that'll just happen because that's the way it is and I have to accept it, or things that I could have done better. And I go back and forth between thinking that there was a better way and thinking that I made a decision that I had to make but that led to something undesirable. And yeah, I like, for me it's all about, there's things I could point to. I wish I had spent more time, dedicated more time. I'm trying to learn Russian, so I wish I had spent more time dedicated to that. But that's not really a huge regret, because I think I'll have time to do it, and I'm continuing to do it, and so it's not major. But for me, it's about I I think I'm somebody who is very uh you know wants to get up and go, right? I um I really, for me, like, it's not about what obstacles I can't, you know what I can't overcome. It's about what opportunities I'm not able to get. It's and I believe very strongly in myself, perhaps naively, um, that I'm, that I'll be able to, um, you know, do my best, do whatever, or I'll, there'll be no point at which I'll stop trying to get better at something and improve upon something. Um, and I think what I'm particularly relating to is with other people, is when I meet somebody that I care about, and I start to kind of develop a relationship with them, um, I get in the habit of, you know, wanting to kind of form this two-way bond where it's, we're both giving a lot, right? And really trying to work at it. And what I find happening a lot is it's a one-sided endeavor where I'm kind of putting a lot into something, and um, in some ways it gives me a purpose, right? When you devote yourself to, being there for somebody else, right? And it's also, by the way, an avenue for you to kind of, there's a lot of skills and things that you develop, right? And a lot of them don't, the purpose is not, it's very hard to see, but kind of in providing for somebody else. Like, I find a lot of times that doing things for myself don't really feel that meaningful. Like, I'll just use a stupid example. Like, I consider myself quite a good cook. But I don't find any satisfaction or meaning in, making myself something, great. It doesn't, like, I lose this thing. But then, to be able to give to somebody else means a lot more. And so I find that, I get into these things where it's very one-sided. Um, and then there's a certain kind of point that I reach where I I want to you know, there's two things happening, because the first is I want, some kind of like, because obviously, right, when you it involves a certain amount of like, when you meet somebody new, right, it involves a certain amount of risk to like kind of say, okay, you know, um I'll give you a shot, right? To kind of do whatever you know, need, or not need, that's a stupid word, but like what you can, to see what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to make it worth it. And I think I get to this point in these things where I feel like, you know, I'm just, stone, like facing a stone wall, because it's like, it maybe ties a little bit back to a feeling that you were saying you have, is where you're like, there's so many things that are piling up, and you devise to kind of be, to be, to develop your toolbox so that you're ready to go. And then you get to this point where there's nowhere to use them. There's nowhere to go, go or to move towards. And then I think a lot of times what happens to me is that frustration boils over. I lose patience, and I say, look, I get tired of waiting, and I say, look, you know, um, I need things to change. And a lot of times what happens then is you know, either something does change for the good, or it ruins, the amount of good that you had, and gets rid of it all. And I think for me, a lot of times, majority of the time, I don't know, I think I've just kind of hoped blindly that people who I think are better, and care more about me don't. And I think I need in the new year to start finding people who I know,
Who share your values.
who share my values, who I know from the beginning are willing to care,
Hmm.
and not, there's been so many times where I just, a great thing, and then it just falls apart in front of me, and like I said, this is where I don't know. I don't know if it's regret, because I don't, when you tell somebody how you feel, right, and that you're like, that you don't appreciate the way they're treating you,
Mm-hmm.
or that the things are bothering you. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But at the same time, I've found that a lot of times doing that leads to the collapse of any kind of
Right. But
relation.
it collapses in the face of the truth.
It does, but maybe the truth is what you don't want to hear, which is
Well, that's exactly
that
why you need to hear it.
you're not, that this wasn't.
Right. Well, I think, if I may,
Yeah.
I think there's this generational trope about relationships, right? That
Yeah.
it should be easy. It should be effortless, right? You should meet someone, then it should just fall into place. Click, and then easy sailing. And I think that is a tremendous deceit. And I think a lot of people have it in their head that when they meet someone, they know, when you know, right? And that there's no standard to hold yourself to, right? There's no nothing transcendent to aim at, right? There's no deep commitment and to another person, and to yourself at the same time. And that's no one's fault necessarily. Or not the individuals anyway. And so I think when and especially as as a young woman or a young man, you're confronted with someone that you like, and then there's always the potential risk of losing someone when you speak the truth.
Right.
Right? When you tell them the truth, when you tell them how you feel, when you tell them what's happened, when you tell them whatever, right? When you tell someone that you care about the truth, there's always a risk that in the short term, something bad's going to happen, right? You lose them. It changes the relationship, right? It's gone. The thing you had that you valued is no longer there. It's fallen apart. But the alternative is, and look, bringing faith into it a little bit, right? The alternative is not saying what you believe to be true, right? Not telling someone how you feel, not offering yourself up to commit yourself to someone, right? For the sake of an enjoyable relationship that will sour the longer you don't tell someone the truth or how you feel. Yeah. And maybe it'll manifest into the way that you want it to, and you didn't need to say anything, but maybe not, right? And maybe there's as you go into the new year, maybe there's better ways of articulating the thing you've been trying to articulate. Yeah. Maybe it is putting yourself in circles where people will be more likely to share your values. We've had this conversation before. So chin up, bro. No, keep at it, right? Keep at it. Right. Don't sacrifice the truth for expediency in a relationship, because it won't work. That'll fall apart as much as anything else, right? And then you will have regrets, right? So what it is you are looking for. That, and I share with you in your. I love cooking for people. Yeah. I love cooking for myself as well, but I love cooking for people. I used to cook for my friends all the time. It's like one of the things that gives me an immense amount of pleasure. Yeah. Right, just to put I came back from Liverpool seeing a concert for a dinner party that I'd arranged with 12 of my friends, and I got home at 7 in the morning. Right, started cooking at 8:30, didn't finish till 9 in the evening. It was just a whole day feast thing. Barely spoke to anybody, right? And people would come in and talk to me or whatever, but I loved it. It was you'd presented this feast, this something you'd created for your friends and people that you love and care about. And so aim for that, right? Don't settle for less. Don't settle for someone that won't appreciate when you bring them their meal in the evening, right? When you've cooked them something, and your love for them is in that meal. Yeah. Right? Don't give that to someone that isn't going to appreciate it. Right? And we do live in a strange time where there does seem to be this leaning in the dating environment of a particular series of values, and those who don't share that are having a difficult time finding themselves a partner. Right? But like I said, keep at it, right? Because they are there, they are out there, and you will find them. And you like we said before, we spoke about going and seeking out circles where you'll be more inclined to meet people who share your values. I attended an event back in when was it? Can't remember, September-ish. In London, Battle of Ideas Festival, just a weekend of just debates and conversations, and I met 5 or 6 young women or women in their mid to late 20s who I given the things that you've just said to me, right? I thought if I sat you in a room, right, with these people, you would find someone, right? Maybe not that you'd fall in love with, but someone that you'd be like, oh, you see what I see, right? You want the same thing as I do from a relationship. So don't despair.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the best thing that happened to us
Oh God. Okay.
in New
Can I give the same answer?
Year. No. Now give me something. Give me something that actually like that wasn't in your control that happened.
Something that wasn't in my control. That was the best this year.
Shoot up, up, up.
That wasn't in my control. It's not good that I'm struggling to think of something positive that happened, is it?
It's really not. Maybe you need to. Maybe that's something you need to work on for next year. You need to, think about more of the things that happen to you. Just
Well, no, I have things that I'm grateful for. Absolutely. I'm closer with members of my family than I have been.
That's
It's
phenomenal.
been not tremendously, but it's been difficult with some members. So there's been some changes and some revelations that have shifted the dynamics of family life, and things have been rocky. Still are rocky, but those seem to be improving. Um, I, on a more personal note, I've been seeing a counsellor less and less this year. There was a period where I was seeing a counsellor on a weekly sort of frequent basis, and I've been shifting away from that. And not out of neglect, but out of not feeling like I need to. That's good. I have my friends, although I always have my friends, but they're always awesome. So I'm always grateful to have them in my life. And, well, to counter my point I was at earlier, I'm still at the University of Edinburgh, for crying out loud, studying philosophy, which is the thing that I set my sights on a few years ago, and here I am doing it,
Yeah.
which is pretty fucking cool. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Yourself?
Um.
And I haven't been watching as much porn. Or any, actually, for that matter.
We kept it PG. And then you had to throw that in there.
Since when has anything we've done been PG? I mean, they're usually okay, I guess.
They're usually okay.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Alright, let's see.
Yeah, see, it's not easy, is it?
Well, okay, I'll give one thing. One of my dogs is 13 and still going strong.
Awesome.
Had a
What kind of dog?
he is mutt. He's a mix between he's kind of like a Beagle Rottweiler.
Awesome.
Yeah, really cool.
Love Rottweilers.
I have 3 dogs actually.
What's the second one?
The second one is a pit bull mix.
Cool. There's
Love pit bull.
two very cool. Yeah, me too.
He's he's hilarious. He's probably he has such a big personality. And he's so talented. Like number one, he I don't know why he's able to do this, but he's able to just walk on his hind legs. Just fine.
Like a person.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's kind of nuts. And he's also one of the only dogs I know that is incredibly not just independent, but understands the way humans work and can manipulate, like can foreshadow, can change his actions to manipulate, what we do. So like one thing he does is, uh, um, he's very loud. Like when he's walking, he's very loud. But he has a capacity to when he's not supposed to you know, um, be when he's doing something he's not supposed to be doing. He goes into this like mode where suddenly
Can't hear a thing.
can't hear a thing. Like you just don't notice him. He's there, and he slips out and goes and eats something or does something.
Right.
And just like you would just hear, or he picks up on like moments when we're kind of doing like when we're doing something else. He'll just wait for like the exact moment, and he'll you know um at the exact moment that we're like looking away, he'll like knock something off the counter and then just like eat it. Like he waits for like
The opportune moment.
the exact moments, or like he'll do stuff where like he'll have a ball that's under a piece of like furniture, right? And if nobody's looking, he he has no problem getting into like the smallest, he'll like do these like acrobatic things to like to get it. He has no problem. But if he knows people are watching, he'll just stand back and
Wait
bark
for you to do it.
and be like, "What the hell?" Like this is your fault.
Right.
What are you doing? Like it's stuff like that where it's very.
That's very interesting.
And he also does this thing where like he won't pee or go to the bathroom in public. Like he needs like people to be like completely not paying attention and go like in the back. Like he doesn't.
That's a very interesting dog.
Yeah, he's incredibly interesting. And he just
What's his name?
Danka.
Danka.
Yeah.
As in thank you.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, and he really does not pay attention to any rules. Or the only saving grace for him is he's incredibly cute.
Okay.
Um,
Other than that, he's a jackass.
he's hilarious. He really is. But yeah, his knack is for causing trouble.
Fair enough.
And then the third one is a Belgian Malinois.
I don't know what that is.
She's all black. All black. She's about 80 pounds, which is about 50 kilos. Very big dog. She's incredibly strong. Belgian Malinois are like a cousin of the German Shepherd.
Spell the last word for me.
Malinois.
Okay, no, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's a cousin of the German Shepherd, but
Cool.
they're like co-op, dogs. She can climb trees.
Very cool.
Yeah. She's a total nut job. And we have to be a little careful because her breed is very like protective,
Okay.
right? She's very much like, gotta protect, my food, my people, my whatever. So when we take her for a walk, she has to wear a muzzle
I
because
see.
you don't, she's usually very nice and sweet, but you just don't
Catch her off guard.
you don't know when she's gonna go into that like gotta protect at all costs mode, and she's like incredibly strong. That yeah, that would be not a good mode for her to.
Fair enough.
But
Don't
yeah,
leave her alone with a stranger's baby kind of dog.
yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
But yeah, the oldest is 13, and there was a brief period where
It's a good age for a dog.
very good age, he was looking really not good. Like he gained a ton of weight, his blood was not good, and then it turns out he just had, and he was very lethargic, and then about a year ago it turns out it was just a thyroid issue. And he started taking thyroid medication.
It's been fine.
and he lost about, he's a 45-pound dog. He lost about 10 pounds. He's more energetic than he was,
Mhm.
you know, 7 years ago. He jumps up, he runs, he's
Oh, that's good.
incredibly,
Yeah,
active
good, Nick.
and good. So it's been really nice to have him, uh, longer than we would have thought. Um,
Nice, man. It's good to hear.
yeah, so that's something, it's a major positive. Um, what else? I have to say, we'll see what happens with these finals, but uni has gone in terms of performance wise pretty well. Um, I chalk that up to something not in my control, just to be honest. At a certain point, I really don't know what's gonna happen. You know, um, but I do feel like I have more will to participate now, and I do feel like I'm grateful for um, I think the people that I've met you know uh, over the course of the year, um, you including, I think have really given me a deeper perspective and allowed me to think more and engage more with, material. So I feel like I'm, I don't know, I don't want to be too rude, but I do feel like I was part of the kind of the Walking Dead, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a while back, and I think I'm now, really starting to, I think also it's not just my drive, but a confidence,
Mm.
that you know, because I do think a lot of times it's not just, and I think this is something that podcast has really helped me with, is I think a lot of times it's not necessarily that people don't have confidence in their thoughts, but they have confidence in their capacity, well, to express them, or they don't have confidence in in the
Their right to express
their
them.
right to express themselves.
Imposter syndrome kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of students who just don't say anything. You
right,
know,
right, right.
um,
It is something I do hear. I have heard a lot of students, some older students as well, talk about that kind of like feeling. And I have this as well. That this whole like feeling like you don't belong in this kind of environment, right? And that you expressing your thoughts about certain things is inappropriate in a way, or
yeah,
it's not good enough, or like, yeah. So I think that's something a lot of people have to get over.
yeah, and
Which you do by doing, right?
and I think I think I've kind of had the benefit of throughout my 3 years, um, being on a lot of these podcasts and just hearing my voice over, various episodes, and also, on this one particular, it's the one I have where I'm able to express myself and feel free. And I think, that's a certain barrier that once you get over, you conversations become a lot better,
Right, right.
and also just, class discussions, right? You're not, because saying something, articulating your point, and giving reasons behind it is not something you gain. You have to practice saying that out. You have to practice being able to say that out loud and do it and express yourself, and also practice being uncomfortable with being in situations where you find yourself in kind of a knot where you don't really know
Hmm.
what else to say or how to say it, or you're kind of like, that's something feeling you have to practice.
Sure, sure.
And I feel like I've got into a place where okay with that.
Good. No, I think I've had something similar, because you kind of go from that position of not liking listening to your own voice, right? Like someone plays you a recording of you and you're like, that's what I sound like. Gross. Like, why get it off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, but like you said, you get better by doing, right? You put yourself in those positions of suffering and discomfort, and then you come out the other side being like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought that was going to be, or it didn't go well, but didn't go. I'm not dead, so it didn't go that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. What are we like for time?
1 hour.
As in, what time is it?
5:13.
5:13.
Not 4:20.
Not 4:20. Not today. Okay, 15 more minutes?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. You guys are getting an intuitive look at planning processes. Okay. I think another thing that would be interesting to briefly touch on.
Sure.
Is
excuse me.
Do you think it's good that we mark the end of each year? Like, do you think you get value out of, like, the fact that, I don't know, let me ask you this. Do you feel like each year is a new kind of reset for you? Like, it's a new chance to tackle what you want to tackle.
I mean, yes and no, right? Because I think, like, my old position of not really caring about New Year's, not doing New Year's resolutions, not thinking about how the last year's gone, just going into it. I don't know. I think it's one of those positions where you can land on that because you think you're thinking reasonably about something. You're like, oh, it's just a year, it's just a time period, right? Like, that's kind of arbitrary anyway. What does it matter if I pay attention to the things that I've done or planned going forward? It's just like, things are going to happen. I'm going to be in situations I can't know, yada yada. You kind of have this rationalization as to why those kind of traditions are pointless. But I'm reminded of a story that Jordan Peterson spoke of when he was doing, I think it was his biblical lecture series, when he was talking about the ancient Mesopotamian myths. And they had this New Year's ritual where the king or the emperor, who'd been king for however long, right, would be taken outside of the walls of the city, right? The priest, or the sort of next ranking thing down from the king, the king would be stripped of his cloak or stripped of his kingly garb. He'd be like knelt down outside the city walls of the city, struck with a glove or something, right? Embarrassed, right? Humbled, you might say.
Yeah.
And then asked, like, what have you done, or what have you done throughout the year that was a mistake, right? How could you have been a better king? Because their god was something like Marduk, I think, who had magic eyes all the way around his head and spoke magic words, and so that was the ideal. And so I think it was something like, how have you fallen beneath the ideal of Marduk, right? How have you not been paying attention, or have you not been speaking words of truth, right? How have you fallen short of that ideal? And then he would do his bit, and then the people of the kingdom would be like, yeah, no, he's all right, he can stay, right? At least he seems to have recognized that thing he did was a bit shit, and I guess you can carry on being king for a while. Or if he was like, nothing, I've been absolutely amazing, and and things aren't going well, it's like, okay, well, I think you can go away now. Yeah. So obviously we don't do that, but we do this kind of at the end of the year, because it is cyclical. We have seasons, right? Everyone recognizes that the year seems to start itself again, right? The trees have a pattern, right? The leaves grow and then they fall off, and then winter and all the rest of it. So there is a cycle, and while we're going through it in a linear fashion, there's this kind of cyclical process as we go through it. So I think there is value, of course, in, like, I say this as someone who wouldn't have previously thought that. I think that there is value in looking at what you've done, being humble enough to recognize that maybe you've fucked up and maybe you've fallen beneath standard, your own standards for yourself, and recognizing when you've done that and doing something about it. Because, and again, I've spent many years of my life not doing that, right? Just being like, nah, everything's fine, forward we go, right? And then you bring with you all this shitty garbage and poor behavior and misconceptions, and right, and these things compound and add up and add up and add up, and then they're just this tremendous burden of you calcified around yourself, which you could have done something about, perhaps if you'd have spent on a maybe once a year gone, well, I wonder if I'm doing anything wrong, right? And then maybe doing something about it, maybe not, but at least you're thinking about it. So no, I do think there is some value to it, and I long answer to that question. Sorry.
It's interesting because I'm traditionally, and I think I've been for pretty much for the past 6 years, kind of been in that same, let's just keep pushing along. It's well, what are we? This is why are we? Just another year. What the hell? And especially in New York, it's very oh, let's watch the ball drop and let's throw a bunch of confetti and blah blah blah. But the way you were describing it is something that I've recently thought a decent amount about, and I urge our listeners, and I urge my family members, I urge myself to really take the time to spend, to be honest with your New Year's reflections, to be honest with yourself, and really don't half-ass them. Don't be like, oh, New Year's resolution, I want to,
eat less cake,
or oh.
I mean, it depends how much cake you're eating. If it's a lot, you should probably eat less cake.
But be honest with yourself and say, what happened last year? What can I improve upon? What can I do? What did I do? Think about what you did well. It's important to realize what you did well, what you achieved.
We can keep doing it then.
You did achieve something, Mark that.
So did you find that when you said you were in New York and there's they're watching the ball drop, and I didn't know that was a thing that they did, but did you find that it was superficial and lacking substance? It was ritualistic, but superficially without...
It was incredibly superficial. So, let's, open up champagne and, and there was none of this, emphasis on... There hasn't and there will not be any emphasis on really taking time to reflect back. Spend an hour, spend 2, spend 3 thinking, what was this year about? What was my mindset throughout January, throughout February, throughout March, April, June, July, August, September, October, November, December? Where have I progressed and where have I regressed? What do I want? What has this experience this year told me about what I actually want in my life? What has it taught me? And, I think that's incredibly valuable. But I don't know if that happens, particularly in, New Year's is just let's open up champagne, let's, watch, a bunch of celebrities do their thing on, television, and that's it.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Reflections are valuable, man.
Well, and these are the things
you don't need therapy to reflect.
No, you don't.
But that seems to be the only time people want to.
Well, but I mean, it's we've detached ourselves from a lot of our traditions because we think ourselves better than them, or we know better, and there.
The Fiddler on the Roof musical?
No.
Tradition, and then it's just it's a song he's talking about all this. How do you preserve all this time, and how do you move on in all these troubled times and blah blah blah, and he goes, and the answer is tradition, and then it's
but I think that's pretty accurate though, because I've had this conversation with a friend of mine a while back, and it was about the like sitting down to eat dinner with your family and praying, right? And again, not like super religious person. I don't do this myself. Just thinking about the practice, right? It's, that give us this day our daily bread and all the
Yeah.
rest of it, right? And it's like these things are, while they might seem superficial or ridiculous or superfluous, that they have embedded within them, like, which is what I think that Fiddler on the Roof thing just expressed
Yeah.
there, these condensed practices into like a 15-second thing you do before you eat dinner, where you sit there and you think, give us this day our daily bread, and that's like a condensed consideration of how the food has arrived in front of you, right? It's like a practiced gratitude, but like condensed into. But there'll be like 10 things in there that prayer you'll be doing.
It's not a temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Right.
know?
Right. I don't know it, but yeah, like but there'll be things condensed in there to think and reflect on, embedded within that. That otherwise you would have to be like, oh, well, how am I going to fit all of this gratitude and thinking about evil into my day? I've got so much stuff to do. And it's like, well, you take 15 minutes at the beginning of your meal and you just commit the time to think about it. And what I was going to say is going back to Nietzsche a little bit in our last conversation, he was like, when he said God is dead, he asked, like, whether are we moving, what is up, what is down, right? We've detached ourselves from these traditions, and now we don't know how to fit the things in that we fit in that the traditions had encapsulated within them. So they become superfluous seeming. They become superficial because we've detached ourselves from. We put a Christmas tree up, we put a wreath on the door. We do New Year's resolutions, but we've forgotten why we did them, and they become superficial.
You know what Nietzsche predicted from the death of God that came? Ideologue dictators who people followed blindly, who ruled ruthlessly, and claimed to be, and were treated like,
Gods.
gods.
Yeah. Yep.
And,
well, because something has to fill. Something has to fill the gap.
The 20th century is, well, probably the worst in terms of like,
The century's not over yet, my friend.
And with that, episode 14 is done.
Thank you, everyone. Take care of yourselves.
The century is not done, but the year will be done shortly. And you will have a new one. And with each year, you are part of a new century. And you can shape that. You can be a part of shaping that the way you want to. So think about that, right? Because when people look back, be a part of shaping the century for a way that you desire it to be.
Unless that's murderous, then don't do that.
Yeah, don't be Nazi. Nice. Shall we?
Well, take care of yourself, everyone.
Yep.
Merry New Year. Merry New Year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.